So this is part 3 of our 4-part series on how to build an authentic Pompeii pizza oven. As you can see, it's finished here, but how did we get there? We started off with our finished dome. It's got a little thin skim coat of the refractory mortar there. You don't really have to put that on, but everybody else seems to put it on, so I do too. I thought it was pretty much a waste of time, but I had some left over, so I gave it a little skim coat. So the stucco I used, I started, of course, with the insulation wool. So here's my ceramic fiber blanket. It was not cheap. I forget where I got it, but it's pretty easy to find on the internet. You get it in each box. Will cover about a little bit more than you need for about 60% of the 70% of the dome. So you actually need just a little bit over 2 boxes for my oven, which is an interior diameter of 42 inches, the outside diameter of 42 plus 4 plus 4. So 50 inches. So you need just over 3 boxes. Kind of a pain. I stagger all the seams, as you can see in the series of photos here. You lay it carefully over from end to end. You cut it. Comes in a roll, so you can just cut it in the lengths you want. When you get the length you want, just carefully cut it with a nice sharp knife. Make sure you wear a mask. Make sure you wear an old shirt that you can throw away if you want, and wear gloves. So once you get your first layer on, make sure your seams match up nicely, about as tight as you can get them. In the 4th image here, you can see the seam is just barely showing a little bit of the ply cast mortar underneath. Well, I mean the mortar underneath. In the next image, I put the second layer on. You stagger the seams, do the same thing, match up the seams nice and tightly, cut it with a nice knife. If you have to change your knife blade, go for it, but use a real sharp knife. And you're going to use 3 1-inch layers, so you end up with 3 nice inches of ceramic blanket. Then you're going to cover that with chicken wire. It's just regular chicken wire you get at the hardware store. And you can interweave the chicken wire without really any other need to use, plastic tags or anything. I just wove it into itself, folded on itself, and then cut it with a simple snips at the end. And once I had my whole dome covered, I mixed up my ply cast mortar. This is a mortar mixed with perlite. It's a lightweight material. There's a mineral base, so it's heat resistant. You mix up your mortar and your perlite if you want to do it from scratch. I thought that was kind of a waste of time. I got the ply cast pretty cheap. It was $15 a bag, and I only used, I think, 1.5 bags. So you don't need much to cover a good sized dome. You mix it so it's stiff, so it won't sag when you're using it, and you just trowel it on. And this series of images shows me troweling it on, because you start at the bottom. You try to start at the top, you can have problems applying. It's going to fall off. So you start at the bottom, just apply from about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch, depending on your proclivities, and slowly work yourself up to the top. And when you apply this, just make sure you don't add too much water, because if you add too much water, it really is going to be difficult to work with. And there I am at the end of the dome. It's nice and clean, and I just cleaned it up a little bit with a brush at the end, and I was ready actually just to let it dry for a few days. I got my stucco mix. This stucco mix I get is a stucco mix that has reinforcing fiberglass in it. A lot of people wouldn't use this for a finish coat. They'd put this on and put a finish coat on afterwards, but I've used this many times. I've used this for over 25 years, and this stuff is really tough. It will not crack if you apply correctly, unless your under layer is unstable, and this is fairly stable. The stucco mix here is a little difficult to mix with. So make sure that if you get a bag of this stucco mix, you only mix up about a third of the bag at a time, or else you're going to have a really hard time. Unless you have an automatic mixer, then go for a whole bag at a time. So I mix it up in small batches, and I apply it in small batches. And you can see in this video here how I apply it. I just take a regular trowel, and I trowel it on slowly. And you can really start anywhere on the dome at this point, because the stucco mix is only about 1/8 of an inch thick. So you don't have to worry about where you start. If you've done a reasonably nice job getting your ply cast on, it'll be a lot easier for you to actually put your stucco on later. When your stucco's thumbprint dry, as they say, you take a damp sponge and pat it to even it out. Any of the little bits of fiberglass reinforcement that are sticking up will lay down flat at that point. The manufacturer says that some people get away with just putting this on without a finish coat. They were kind of curious about the whole thing about using it on a pizza dome. They had never heard of anybody doing a pizza dome, so they wanted me to let them know. I'm fairly familiar with the manufacturer, so they were really curious, and they were actually very helpful in telling me the thicknesses and so forth to try and go for, and the colors to use too, because you can get this stucco mix in just about any color you want. So once I'm finished with the dome and sponging the dome and making it nice and even, I stuccoed the base, and the same fiberglass reinforcement I used for the base, because I wanted to be able to cover all my joints completely and make sure that as it worked around the corner, it wasn't going to be weak on the corners. You can see on the front here that there's a gray, there's a light tan, and there's a darker tan. They sent me free a whole bunch of colors to test, maybe because I've been working with them a long time, but this sort of material trowels on reasonably easy. It's not that easy to work with, but once you get used to it, you just realize that you have to move along with it and be pretty aggressive at troweling it on. When it's, again, thumbprint dry over here, I'm in the bottom, I'm sponging it to get it to have a nice mottled appearance. When it dries, you'll notice that it dries a couple of shades lighter than it goes on. And it takes really a full day to dry, so don't do it on a rainy day. Do it on, and try not to do it in the bright sun either, because it'll dry too fast. You might want to, at the very end of it, spray with a very, very fine mist. And that's pretty much it for the stucco. The tin pan bended and the story ended. Thank you very much. Bye.